That's good. मैंने कल फिर बैठ के वो दूसरी किताब भी पढ़ ली. मैंने कहा हाँ, मैंने कहा कि अब वो होना ही है तो फिर ज़रूर उसको. Should we start?
Hello. Hello. Good evening. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's a humble request to respectable audience. Please be seated so we can move towards our next session. Thank you so much.
Assalamualaikum.
Should we start?
How are you? See.
Assalamu alaikum, ladies and gentlemen. I hope I am audible to you. My name is Dr. Omair, and one thing I have learned from my very short stints at festivals is it is always difficult to wait for the people to settle down. But if you start, then people start settling down. So I'll be doing that exercise. We are today having a book session with ZAHID Hussain Saab, and with me is Dr. Nafisa Shah Saiba. And we both will be trying to pick the brain of the author, ZAHID Hussain, whose two books are under discussion, Face to Face with Benazir and A Dialogue with History. Zahid Sab, you come from a generation of print media journalists, and we in our infancy read Barbara Walters, Oriana Fallaci, when we, the interview was actually a thing in our print media. Print media interviews like David Frost were pinnacle of journalism. But now you live in a time when podcasts, visual interviews have replaced that generation. So I would just like for you to describe the process of a print media interview. How do you record? How do you transcribe it? How do you prepare for that interview? So the science of interview precisely, how you would do that for any celebrity. That I would like you to share with our audience.
Thank you so much, Umar. Well, I have to say that this old school journalism may be right. What we witness today and what we see on social media and is the era of electronic media. And I think probably things have changed completely. If you compare the kind of interviews we used to conduct during our journalism, it was much more thorough. It was actually, we were well prepared with the background and what we wanted to ask. And I think probably it's also something to do with the print media itself, because people who would read it, who would like to, be there, would like to know actually about that person, about the political, whatever their views are, because if you see this collection of interviews, they are not only with politicians. They're also with people who had done something in a different field. There are lots of them, in fact, and also some of the foreign dignitaries. So I think probably it needed, if you don't have the background information or knowledge, you can't actually talk to them because every one of them in their own field have done something. And I think probably what is lacking today is that if you see the electronic media interviews, they're either very harsh on somebody, and or rather, actually, we rather doing some kind of public relationing. I think that tradition of asking tough questions, but in a more civilized way, I think that those days are gone. And when I'm talking about this book, it's a piece of history, because they are not just interview of some people, but also it give you some kind of understanding of the political situation or the social situation at that particular period of time. So that was my purpose, and that's how I did it.
Dr. Sahiba.
First of all, let me thank Amina for giving me this opportunity. Not just to, मैं अगर आज साहिब किताब हूँ तो मैं समझती हूँ वो अमीना का क्रेडिट जाता है. तो मैंने अपनी थीसिस लिख दी थी और अमीना ने फिर मुझे मौका दिया कि आप इसको पब्लिश करें. And then being here is also to her credit. ये तो बहाना है. लेकिन what I find very nostalgic about being here कि मेरी जो earlier life थी या जन्म था वो बहैसियत सहाफ़ी था और शायद उस capacity में मैं इधर बैठी हुई हूँ और मेरे साथ मेरे former colleague बैठे हुए हैं और मेरे आगे मेरी 3 colleagues भी बैठी हुई हैं. So I really want to thank you. Zahid, आपके किताब obviously we've lived this together. आपकी जो struggle है, आपका lifestyle है, आपका एक passion है writing के साथ. I've been a witness to that as a journalist. Newsline में मैं बहैसियत छोटी काम करती थी and they used to call me a slave. So my journalistic career and my career of writing and जिसमें Rahina is my mentor, Zahid too in a way is my mentor. So it began there and I saw this whole process of Zahid, sort of, uska ebb and flow and this whole journey as a journalist. I witnessed it. So my questions, Zahid, on all these, obviously this एक dialogue with history and then Shahid Bibi ke interviews. What I want to ask today is you have listened as a journalist and you have listened across ideological divides and you have listened across decades. Of course, you've asked questions also. But you managed to speak to a range of Pakistani leaders and those abroad also. So you've managed to speak to nationalists like Ghausbek Bizenjo, Khan Abdul Wali Khan, Basha Khan, and then you've spoken to dictators like General Musharraf. Then you have spoken to prime ministers like Mohammad Khan Junejo and Shahid Benazir Bhutto. And then you also spoke to visionaries like Asma Jahangir and development icons like Mehboob-ul Haq and Nafis Sadek. What is really the common link or the invisible thread that weaves it together into a book? I mean, that is what is, and what I also find intriguing is, for me, as I started reading, as engaging as the interview itself was, what I really found very, very, again, nostalgic, but also very, is your introduction to all of these. I think that for me was history. Of course, the interviews themselves is a historical content, and one can speak endlessly on how interviews और historiography का link जो है उस पे हम बात कर सकते हैं if there are any historians here. But what I found very interesting was your intro to them, and I want to find out if this intro is new or is it also old, and also how you string everything together.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think probably my journalist career or my association with Herald started with an interview, which is there. This was, I think I was after student life and then my political activism days. I'd just gone to England and there somebody asked me whether you would like to interview Bani Sadr and Masood Rajavi. They were actually, that was the time when the Iranian Revolution had taken place. And Bani Sadr was the first elected president of Iran. And he had just fled after he fell up with Imam Khomeini. So he fled to Paris. So I had started writing freelance somewhere, but I was not in a mainstream journalism anyway, and I did not know what to do at that point of time. So I went there, Paris, and then interviewed Bani Sadr and Masood Rajavi. Bani Sadr, I mean, there was, that was very historical, and I think probably there was the most impressive personalities I've ever met. Both Bani Sadr and Masood Rajavi. Everybody, I think most of you would know Bani Sadr. He was a scholar. In fact, actually, when I was interviewing him, it seemed that I was not speaking to a politician, but a scholar. And he was so thorough about everything, about the history of Iran. And then actually Masood Rajavi, who was a revolutionary, and he was one of the people who really led this revolt against Shah Iran. But he had to also fled because of the whole situation had changed when the hardliner took over. So that was my beginning. And I think probably that gave me, then I sent it to Herald. And when I came back to Pakistan, I received a call from Razia Bhatti, who was the editor of Herald. And Herald has just started changing with a new format. And so she asked whether I would like to join, and that was beginning of my journalistic career. And I think probably that was, I could see that it was the most productive period of my life. And I learned a lot, because I did not know actually how to write, and it was Razia Bhatti who taught me to write, in fact. And that basically, it mattered me, the whole career, it hugely mattered. And I think that was one thing. The other interview was, which very, I'll come back to Benazir Bhutto, but in this book, I think most memorable interview was with Ghaffar Khan, Basha Khan. I think he was a kind of a living legend at that point, and one of the most impressive political leader. I always wanted to interview him. So when I finally got him in Bannu, and the way he lived, and he lived his life, we all know about how long, actually 3 decades of jail during British period, and even actually when Pakistan was formed, he was, most of the time, he was in prison. When I interviewed, I went to see him, so he had already gone and addressing public rallies. And in the evening when he came back, it's about 6, he was in such a bad shape. He was, by some of his associates, he was taken to his bed. And he was already in 90s at that point. And when I went there, I asked, that I have just come to interview you. He said, come tomorrow at 5 in the morning. So I thought, my God, actually, whether he would be awake by then, or in that situation, this condition, I was not sure that I would see him that next morning. But when I went there, he was all alert. He was having his morning tea, and he spoke to me about, at length, actually, for almost 2 hours. And that was one of the most memorable periods. So I came to know, actually, all those people. But before going to that, I have read a lot about his life, about his political struggle, and everything about his political views. So I think this process was also a learning for me. It was also an education for me. It was not just that I've joined there to interview, but it's also got me so much knowledge about those, not only those people, but also that era.
Zahid Sahab, one thing that is now unimaginable in our current situation, but you have done it. You have interviewed Indian politicians. You interviewed Rajiv Gandhi, and you interviewed L.K. Advani. And both come from the opposite side of political spectrum in India. And that must have been quite an experience. And that is, I think, one of the more enlightening interviews when I was going through your book, especially with Rajiv Gandhi, because the way you describe him, very few biographers of even Rajiv Gandhi have written about him or his relationship or his views towards Pakistan in that way. So would you share that experience with us?
Well, it was very interesting. I think it was 1988. And that was a very historical period for Pakistan. After a long time, after a long period of military dictatorship of Ziaul Haq, we finally had an election, and new government was installed, Benazir Bhutto. So that was what could only describe that period was so much hope. And then actually SAARC summit conference took place in Islamabad. I think probably it's about 1 month after Benazir Bhutto was sworn in as the first woman prime minister of the Muslim world. And so I mean, as a journalist, it was the best time to have this, have a meeting with Rajiv Gandhi. All of them come. Rajiv Gandhi, little bit for the background. Rajiv Gandhi had just become prime minister after the assassination of his mother, and he came to Islamabad after visiting China. So he came, and when I went to interview him in Punjab House, he was there, and very young person, very young, and raw, completely raw. I mean, like, he was not a seasoned politician if you meet, actually. And when I started formal interview, so he was quite reluctant to answer some of the things. Either he did not know or did not want to say much. And most of the time, he would look towards Parthasarathi, who was his principal secretary. Parthasarathi, he was also High Commissioner in Pakistan once upon a time. So that basically he was not very comfortable talking to about politics or international affairs. But the most interesting part of my discussion came when I finished formal interview, and then he came to life. And that was the most interesting discussion I had, was that actually he was so fascinated with Benazir Bhutto, and I think probably he wanted to know everything about her. And that was an era where they both young leader of subcontinent wanted to change and wanted to have kind of, remove the past and start something for future. And that was one of the most historical interviews that also gave some kind of understanding to me, and also that era, particular era. I think that was one of those periods in Pakistan history where there was a lot of hope of peace, and I think both the countries moving forward.
Thank you. I'll take the cue from you. Your second book is Face to Face with Benazir Bhutto, Shaheed, my leader as well. My question is around this book. You have done several interviews with her, and perhaps that's why you've placed it as a separate book, apart from this other one, which carries other personalities. You have interviewed her mostly in the 80s, but also in the 2000s. The last interview was 2001. I want to know, how have you seen her in these various stages, as a politician in power, a politician in exile, and then her return? And also, how do you analyze her evolution and her thinking from a young leader in the 80s and then, through the progress? So if you can speak a little bit about this book.
I think, yes, it's the most, I had actually interviewed him in various periods of her political career, starting from when she came back to Pakistan in 1986. And young Benazir, I remember actually, I was with Herald. Yes, Herald. It was still Herald. Because I keep confusing actually when some of the interviews were taken when I was at Herald, and then some of the Newslands. I think in '88 I was still, that was for Herald, I think. So I remember actually I was in Lahore, and I have never seen in my journalist career this kind of reception to any political leader. It was, my God, the world has turned up in Lahore. And then I followed her all over Punjab, wherever she went. That was a historical era, too. And then I found some time with her. And one, she was surrounded by her supporters. And obviously, it was very difficult to take her to separately and talk about it, to have a proper interview with her. And so, but she came, and we sat down. And I think probably it was 1 hour or 40 minutes interview. And it was it's fascinating because she was just 32. And, but if you read the book, that interview, I must say that she sounded so mature. It was like actually any mature, and I think probably I have not met anybody in Pakistan politics who had such a clear view of when she came here. And such a clear view, such an understanding. Look, actually, just see, and her father was assassinated, and she had gone through so much, actually. You know, Benazir Bhutto did not become a leader just because she was daughter of Zulfikar Ali Bhutto. She was actually, certainly, she got into politics because she was daughter of Zulfikar Ali Bhutto. But she earned the leadership on her own right. And that showed. And you know, what impressed me in this interview, it was her own thinking. She was a daughter of Bhutto, but she was not just parroting what Mr. Bhutto, or she was not just talking about Mr. Bhutto, but she was talking about politics, what would she like to see Pakistan as. And the most impressive thing is that she differentiated between Zia's, because Zia is still in power, but there was also some elections had happened in 1985 elections, and Mr. Junijo's government was there. So she differentiated between a military dictator and the people who had been elected to the assembly. And there was nothing of revenge. And that makes, I think, probably makes her a very great leader, because, in this kind of situation, people would talk just about revenge, but just about what happened to her father, but not that much at all. And rest of the interview, 14th interview at different period of time, and you will all know, we were very critical of Benazir Bhutto whenever she came to power, very critical. But I must admire her. But she had the capacity to engage with you intellectually. Each time when I went to interview her, she spoke, and I have traveled with her many times, several times, all over the world, covering her visits to United States and other places. But when we had actually almost have some kind of arguments also. It was not like that any of the interview was like public relationing or something like that, massaging her ego. No, not that time, not that. I remember we did a cover story when her first government was ousted, take the money and run. And next day, a few days later, I interviewed her, and also Asif Ali Zardari, so I think that was, that journalism was that kind of like you don't have to, to be a part of them, but basically as a journalist, basically whatever your biases are, whatever your political thinking, everybody has a political view. But when you are interviewing and when you are writing something, you have to, keep it, away, and then be a journalist and examine the. As you said, I interviewed everyone. General Musharraf, very long 2 interviews. Asif Ali Zardari's most interesting interviews, and Junijo. But one thing actually, I never wanted to interview Ziaullah. That was, I don't know, and in fact, actually, I never wanted to meet him. I never met him. And in fact, actually, I got my first APNS award, but I refused to receive from him. So that was actually only.
As Paulo Coelho says, if you want to meet someone, the whole universe conspires to make the two of you meet. I think in your case, the whole universe conspired that you never get to meet Ziaul Haq Saab.
No, it was my own choice.
Oh, I know, I understand. But if he would have remained president, the way he was going for life, it would have been difficult. So the last thing that I would ask, and then I'll go to the audience question and answer, because we are running out of time a bit. The Art of Interview, which is quite a famous book, says that a successful interview is the one which brings out something that the person being interviewed would not say in normal times. Bringing out something which is not public knowledge or which is not a public stance. So you remember something scandalous like, Nixon Frost interview, something of that sort happening in one of your interviews. I have picked a few moments in your book, but I would like you to bring those out and share with the audience.
Well, I think probably most, hard question or a hard talk I did actually with Asif Zardari. You could see that. I mean, one interview was when 1990, Benazir's first government had gone, and we all know our colleagues are sitting here, and what a critical, scathing, pieces we had done about, Asif Ali Zardari and others. So I went to see him in Nawab Shah, And I mean, like, one should also give him credit that he had read whatever we had been writing. I knew him well that way. So, the questions we started, everything. At one point, he said, "It seemed that you are not interested in my political view. You just wanted to know about my corruption." So, you know, so they also respected us. You know, that's the thing, actually. You ask the toughest question, very hard questions, but without actually, I will not say antagonizing them, but at least be rude to them.
Anyone from the audience wants to say something? Please speak in the mic so everyone can hear.
We would like to know about your interview with L.K. Advani.
Yeah, I had gone to India. I think that was 1991 or 92, I don't remember, when this election was taking place, where Saffron, they started emerging as a one of the major political force in India. And I was there actually during election period. Met Advani also, several other Indian leaders. Advani was quite, he is from Sindh. People know about it. And when I said I'm also Hyderabad, my God, he became very, curious about to know actually what was happening in Hyderabad. He lived in Hyderabad till 1954. And entire lot around him were all Sindhis. And so that was the bond I first actually, when I told him that also came from Hyderabad. He actually taught or studied at Government College, Puleli. But he, it's very, very interesting. He was the person who, the rise of BJP started with his, that famous yatra, yes. And so that was the period. But he came across very civilized leader. He tried to tell me, that was the heading, I am the most secular person, and BJP is the most secular party. So that is the thing. But I must admire actually the leadership there. I mean, their closeness to the people. And that actually I always like some of the Pakistani leaders too, that they were from the people. They were not something which is basically what we call elite, something which is completely separate from the people. We have this kind of leaders, still have. But basically, this is like, for example, Bacha Khan, like Ghausbas Bezinjo, another person who I really admire. And then there's so many others. And among those people who are not political, I think the most impressive was Nafisa Shah. I don't know how many people know about her. She was the UNFPA chief, first Pakistani woman to that highest position in UN. And I remember I was there in Washington on some, I was working on some project there. So I went to see her in New York. She was based in New York. And she said, why not actually come to Mexico? There was a population summit going on there. So I went there and then I interviewed. So she was most impressive among all. Like she knew the subject. And if you read the interview, it was quite interesting in a way. Like, it was not polemical, I would not say polemical, but, some of the things actually which I asked, so she also clarified, no, this is not like this, this is such. But she was very impressive. Asma Jahangir I interviewed when she was very young. I think probably it was 1985 somewhere. And she was not Asma Jahangir, which we know later on, but my God, actually, she was firebrand and really solid. I think in her views, a kind of person who was willing to take on anyone.
Our time has just elapsed, the organizer saying, but if You want to take the questions, Zahid sir?
Sorry, yes, sir.
Sure.
There's one there and there.
Ji.
Ji, Zahid sir, conversation with history continues, I hope, with you.
Dialogue with history.
Dialogue with history is the same. तो मैं कह रही हूँ कि ये वो तो वो हंस के और नफीसा भी हंसी उस पर कि वो करप्शन को हंस के हटा देते थे, तो आपने यंगर जनरेशन से इंगेज किया है क्योंकि आप इतने अच्छे स्केदिंग क्लियर आर्टिकल्स अब भी लिख रहे हैं, क्या वो पढ़ रहे हैं जो हिस्ट्री इन द मेकिंग है उनके बाकी बच्चे? Do you feel, have you met and have you kind of had a dialogue with them?
So the young guy has your
Are they reading?
I would love to have that.
Yes.
There's one
But in a different
ask.
era.
He must get that.
Yeah.
Sorry. It's a younger chap.
We have a member of the younger generation with the
Average,
book of
huh.
Zahid Saab in his hand.
I think, yeah. Well, actually,
Oh, okay.
all those interviews are taken before 2004. And after that, actually, my journalistic career took a different turn. I'm still writing. I still interact with people. In fact, actually, in Islamabad, whenever I'm invited to speak at university, and like Adab University, so I've been invited all the time. And that is the best thing, actually, when I learned a lot there. No, but I'm not into that now. So I don't go and interview people, sorry. But still I'm writing about it. I wrote about everything. And I think it's a different phase of journalism.
Sure. The last comment, please.
अस्सलामुअलैकुम, मेरा सवाल है कि वो लीडर्स जिनकी रेटरिक बहुत रेडिकल होती है, जब आपने उनको इंटरव्यू किया तो उनको इंटरव्यू रूम में आपने कैसा डिफरेंस पाया? वो लीडर्स जिनकी रेटरिक बहुत रेडिकल होती है, जब आपने उनको इंटरव्यू किया तो डिड दे हैड एनी जस्टिफिकेशन फॉर देयर रेडिकल रेटरिक? आपने उनको कितना डिफरेंट पाया? जैसे आपने एल.के. अडवाणी की एग्जांपल ली, उनकी रेटरिक बड़ी हार्डकोर टाइप की थी, बट व्हाट काइंड ऑफ पर्सन डिड यू फाइंड हिम व्हेन इंटरव्यूड हिम?
मैंने बताया ना कि बहुत ही जैसे होते हैं ना सॉफ्ट स्पोकन and very civilized that way. It was not like actually anti-Pakistan rhetoric or whatever. वो नहीं था कुछ, बल्कि वही था मैं बता रहा हूँ आपको कि जो है एक चीज़ को जाहिर करने की कोशिश की कि उसके व्यूज़ वो नहीं है जो कि लोग समझते हैं रेडिकल है. उसके अलावा भी ऐसे बहुत सारे रेडिकल लीडर्स को भी मैंने किया है. जाम साखी उसको मैं वैसे भी जानता था. उसके जो रिवोल्यूशनरी पीरियड या एक्टिविज़म पीरियड में जो है वो हमारे सबके एक ही साथ के थे. तो वो जो है दैट जाम साखी को आप जानते हैं, पता नहीं यहाँ लोग, कि जाम साखी वन ऑफ द ब्रेवेस्ट और जिसको लेफ्ट लीडर थे. और मेरा ख्याल ये है कि शायद लोग भूल जाते हैं कि क्योंकि उसने तकरीबन 10-15 साल तक जेल में रहा. और उसका इंटरव्यू अगर आप देखें तो आपको मालूम होता है कि ये लोग जो वाकई जो है लोग काम कर रहे होते हैं या रिवोल्यूशनरी भी होते हैं, ज़रूरी नहीं है कि उनके रेटरिक वो होंगे, बल्कि उनके आर्गूमेंट ज़्यादा पावरफुल होते हैं. दे स्पीक थ्रू देयर आर्गूमेंट, नॉट कि कितनी ऊंची आवाज़ में बोलते हैं या जितने भी जो बाकी लीडर्स होते हैं सॉलिड, तो उनकी जो है रेटरिक नहीं होती है. और ये मेरे आप इंटरव्यू में देखेंगे कि आई डोंट सी एनी. शेर मोहम्मद मरी आई हैव इंटरव्यूड. शेर मोहम्मद मरी के जानते हैं आप लोग. शेर मोहम्मद मरी वाज वन ऑफ द लीडर्स ऑफ द थर्ड जो इंसर्जेंसी थी वहाँ बलूचिस्तान में. और उसका एक लीडर था जिसको कहते हैं शेरोफ, जनरल शेरोफ उसको भी कहते थे. एंड ही वाज द मोस्ट पोलाइटेस्ट पर्सन. एंड आई थिंक रीड देम. मैं लोगों से ये कहता हूँ कि आप लोगों को अगर जज करना है तो उनको पढ़ें कि क्या कह रहे हैं. हमारे यहाँ नज़दीक ये होता है कि अभी ख़ास तौर पे अब जो सबसे ख़राब चीज़ हो रही है इस वक्त पाकिस्तान की तारीख़ में, विच आई हैव नेवर एक्सपीरियंस, सच ए पोलराइज्ड वर्ल्ड. पोलराइजेशन ठीक होती है, आइडियोलॉजिकल भी होती है, लेकिन ये थी कि अंधी एतक़ाद कि मैं इस सोच का हूँ तो वो जो है वो बाकी जो है, बल्कि सोशली बैठना मुश्किल हो जाता है कि मैं इमरान खान के साथ हूँ, मैं फलाने उसके अपोजिट हूँ. तो मतलब ये है कि उसके बाद आपको आर्गूमेंट की कोई गुंजाइश नहीं रहती है. तो मेरा अपना सबसे ज़्यादा मशवरा यंग जनरेशन को है कि आप ज़रूर सोचें, आपकी पॉलिटिकल एफिलिएशन भी होनी चाहिए, लेकिन ये था कि आप उसको रीजनिंग भी करें और अपनी जो है वो जिसको कहते हैं कि आप सीखें इस बात को कि आप चीज़ों को समझने के मतलब ये है कि आपको फिक्स आइडियाज़ नहीं होने चाहिए. दुनिया में सबसे ख़राब चीज़ होती है किसी को डॉगमेटिज्म. कि आपने अंधा एतकाद जो है अगर कर लिया तो आप कभी भी आगे नहीं बढ़ सकते हैं.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Just on a last word.
Thank you with that profound message from
जी.
Dr. Zahid Hussain. अभी जो आपने youth के लिए बोला बहुत अच्छा था. And thank you so much for this session. And Omair and Nafisa, thank you for...
Just the last thing, the book is actually available for sale. So if any of you are interested in exploring this dialogue with history further, do have this book from the Lightstone Publisher Store.
Gee, thank you so much. The book is available for everybody to buy. Thank you.
हाँ और अच्छा है. That's right. मैं क्या करूँ सर ये
वो असल में 25 मिनट था और हम officially we have actually started after our time.
चलो खैर.
The next session, we would love to talk to you more, but unfortunately we are in such a backlog. The evolution and decline of progressive literature and politics in Pakistan. That is the title of the next session. I would like to invite Dr. Nazir Mahmood and Dr. Said Jafar Ahmed to please come up on the stage. The evolution and decline of progressive literature and politics in Pakistan.